What's going on, folks? It is Friday. I know you guys are like, weren't you on here yesterday? But that was that. This is now. It is Friday Night Live. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We have an awesome show with a couple of awesome guests tonight. Como Comics, Bronze Age Nerd. We will be bringing them in shortly. Got to give a shout out to the early birds. What is going on, Dale? All good, man. It will be here whenever you hop back on. Dan, what's up, Dan? Michael. And we got Spider Dude, Marvel Goddess, Pedro. Folks, I hope you all had a good week. This week kicked my ass. I'm telling you guys, all the way around. It went by really fast though, but here we are, Friday. Of course, we're going to talk about a couple of updates, things going on with the channel before we bring in our guests and get to diving into everything slabs, folks. We're not talking like CGC. We are talking graded comics. We have about 3 main talking points, and of course, we're going to branch out within each of those talking points, but we're going to have this roundtable discussion. It's going to be awesome. Big shout out to Tony Trombetta, president of EGS, in the house. He says, this should be interesting. Gloria, what's going on, Matt? Matt, congratulations to Matt for being a winner of one of my 10K giveaways. Miguel G. I do believe Miguel G is a finalist on Combo Book Cannon's Fresh from the Comic Shop giveaways. And Joe's in the house. Joe Kirk, Peter, Viper, Joe. Let's see, Louie's here. So I do want to make a couple announcements. I want to start off by, yes, I am still running multiple 10K sub giveaways. Now, I do want to apologize for everyone that's already won. All right, I have my stack right here, including the winner. I can't remember your name if you're watching, but I still got to get the winner of this Alpha Flight out. We have the winner of the Exo Man of War store folio with a grab bag filled with comics in there that needs to go out. We have the winner of the Venom book, which was one of the Fresh from the Comic, or excuse me, the Comic Book Canon 1K giveaway, as well as the Spider-Man slab. And then, of course, I believe it was Super Rad who won my Whatnot live sale. Anybody that made purchases in my Whatnot sales. So big shout out to Super Rad Comics for winning this. Ironically enough, Super Rad bought a bunch of Spider-Man stuff and he won the Spider-Man slab. So folks, I've been super busy. I haven't been able to make it to the post office, and that's what it boils down to. But I promise you all, I'm not hoarding these. I'm not changing my mind and keeping these. Everyone will get their giveaway. You just got to give me a little bit of time. We're still running the $50 My Comic Shop gift card. There was 2. There's still one that's running. We're still running one of the EGS slabs. I do believe it was this one. Yep, the Spawn 311, Chadwick Boseman, McFarlane Tribute, and the EGS 9.8. We're still running that. And we have yet to run. This is one of the grand prizes. Big shout out to Dan De La Torre for donating this. Spectacular Spider-Man 64, first appearance of Cloak and Dagger on a 9.6 CGC signature series at Hannigan. Right. Yep. Right there. Boom. And then we also are going to have a $150 A1 comic grand prize as well. But more details on those. I will be having more videos coming up too, where you can watch the video, make sure you're subscribed, comment on that video to win as well. So I'm hoping to make a trip to the post office sometime early next week. Okay, so that was the big update I wanted to let everyone know about. Comic Toby in the house. What's going on? Simon is here. What's going on, Simon? Christian. It is a beautiful Spawn cover for sure. Okay, a couple of other things. We are 1 week away from my next Whatnot sale. I will not be here doing a Friday Night Live next week. I will be on Whatnot around the same time. And anybody that makes a purchase there is going to be entered in to have a chance to win this beautiful Batman 500, the foil variant, signed, and you can see the signatures there by Joe Quesada and Kevin Nolan. Okay. I'm going to actually throw in a book or two more on top of this for the winner. Every purchase is an entry to win this. Okay. So again, 99% of my stuff is available for a buy it now sale right now. So you guys can go follow me on the Whatnot app right now and purchase almost everything that I'll be auctioning off. Once we go live, everything goes to auction. I currently have this Amazing Spider-Man 209. It's a higher grade, very fine, near mint 9.0, first appearance in origin of Calypso. She was just announced in cast for the Craven show. So this is available for buy it now, right now on the Whatnot. But I'm also taking offers, guys. If you want to hit me up privately on IG. So, okay. One last thing before we bring in our guests. Well, also, remember, folks, no comic book canon tonight. We changed our weekly show over to Sundays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you're subscribed to us over there. Links below. And remember, we are giving away a slab a week for the next few weeks. So make sure you tune in. You have to tune in and be subscribed on Sunday in 2 days to have a chance to win an amazing CGC slab. All right. Here's the last thing I want to talk about before we bring in our guests, though. Okay. Right now on the Whatnot app, let's see. I want to see how many followers I have, because if we get to a certain amount of followers tonight, I'm going to be giving a book away. All right. I have 448 followers on the Whatnot app. If we reach 475, so that's 27 more followers. There's more people right now watching. If we make 475 followers, I'm going to be giving away somebody that's here tonight this awesome The Boys #1. This is the Gem Mint Comic Tom exclusive variant with a Scout Comic digital pack as well. So again, check me out at Journos Comics on the Whatnot app. There is a link below. If you use that link to sign up, if you don't have the app yet, you will get $10 off of your first purchase. And it doesn't have to be a purchase from me. It could be a purchase from anybody on Whatnot. All right. Mark Lineker is in the house. What's going on, Mark? Mike Winters, David LaRoe. Awesome. Viper, I don't know exactly who the artist is, to be quite honest. All right. We'll have to look that one up. Who's ready to talk about slabs, folks? Let's bring in our special guests. All right. We'll just bring them in at the same time. We got two heavy hitters, guys. Welcome in Drew from Como Comics, Christopher, a.k.a.
What's happening?
Bronze Age Nerds. What is going on, guys?
Living the dream. That's Midwest for doing good.
Yes.
Here to hang out and talk some slabs.
Right. Indeed. So again, to both of you, thank you so much for hanging out tonight. Friday Night Live, I've been doing it for a while now, but I really want to get into this format of bringing a couple people on and really honing down on certain topics of discussion and having this, round table type dialogue. So very happy to have both of you here tonight to be discussing graded comics. So, we're going to flesh some things out, but for my viewers right now, folks, both of their links to their YouTubes are below in the description. So please, if you're not subscribed to Como or Bronze Age, check out that link, give them a sub. All right. We are going to talk really quick, about each of them. So, Drew, I'll start with you. Just tell us a little bit about Como Comics and what you got going on over there.
All right. Como Comics started back in 2012. I got tired of paying retail price for comics. So I'm like, I'm going to start buying collections. And turns out when you do that, well, you got to start selling comics or you drown in them pretty quickly. So I did that for a few years and decided around fall of 2018, winter 2019, I realized that YouTube's a thing. It's not just cat videos. So,
yeah, you're right.
So once I kind of started understanding what YouTube was, I'm like, well, maybe I should try something like this. And right before the lockdown happened, I'm like, I'm going. Let's do this. And it turned out it was a pretty good time to get into it because I got those first couple of videos out before everybody got locked down. And, I like talking about comic books, and had some things happen at my local LCS where I'd basically what had been my home away from home for years. My longtime buddy passed away, and it wasn't what it was anymore. He was the store co-owner. So I needed a place to talk about comics. Sorry. Well, that got heavy. Sorry about that.
No, man. And you know what? I think that speaks to, what this community does for us and everyone that's here, whether we are in front of a camera or just in the chat, especially during these last couple of years. So definitely thank you for sharing your origin story. Really, really awesome to see how everyone, kind of got their foot in the door and made that jump to say, hey, I want to start making some YouTube videos. Bronze Age.
Hey, what's up? Hey, thanks a lot for having me here. Pleasure to be here with Chris and Drew. So about my channel a little bit, a very somewhat similar origin story to Drew there. During lockdown, at the beginning of lockdown, I decided I needed something to kind of get out there and get sort of more social. Going online on YouTube isn't necessarily completely social, but hey, we got this wonderful community here. I was able to tap into that a little bit and sort of get a creative outlet. And I wanted to, learn how to do some video editing and some video production. And I thought, hey, I've been thinking about this whole YouTube thing for years now. What could I do? Well, comic books are something I love. Why not do a channel about comic books? I saw all these great channels out there, like Chris at Journos Comics, and all these other fantastic channels. And I said, hey, I think I can add a voice to that. And I ended up really finding kind of my niche with sort of talking about spec and FOMO, and not really like pumping up anything or like saying, here's what I'd recommend buying, but maybe kind of looking at the devil's advocate side of things a little bit, and maybe trying to speak to those people that are kind of battling with an addiction to FOMO, or they're a little bit worried about, that social media lifestyle kind of catching up to everybody when they see the hot books on their feeds, that kind of thing. And really kind of speaking to those people and talking about thought processes about how we collect comic books, which is a perfect topic for tonight.
Awesome. Yeah. And some of that stuff, I did discuss a couple weeks ago with Swaggle and Automatic. So there's always really good stuff to talk about when it comes to comics. It blows my mind. I'm sure we all know, like we create content often, and it's like, some days I know for me, it's like, whoa, what am I going to make a video about today? But then it comes. So there's always something going on. And what better of a going on than talking slabs? Now, obviously, you all probably saw the title, Graded Comics, love them or hate them, right? I think the comic hobby in general it can be very polarized. But when we talk about graded comics, that can be very, very polarized very often. So we're going to get into three main talking points today. But just briefly, I do want to ask both of you, or just have you both give your, as collectors, we're not content creators, we're not YouTubers, we're not analyzing, deep on that level as of yet. I just want to ask you, and Bronze Age, I'll start with you. As a collector, what's your brief thoughts in terms of how you collect graded comics?
So, it's kind of interesting. It actually, I'd love to separate it completely, but it actually does tie into the whole YouTube thing, because, there's great channels out there like Very Gary, where like you just do these tons of crazy CGC unboxings. And I thought that looked cool. I never really thought about grading comic books before. So that's when I started submitting comic books in. And I usually did it from my childhood collection. There was books that I thought, it'd be cool to pass this on to my daughter someday. Or if something ever happened to me at some point, it'd be nice for my family to have these books encapsulated at a grade where the resale value is a little bit easier to determine, so they don't have to try to find somebody who's going to rip them off by buying a bunch of raw comic books if something like that were to happen. So I kind of started slabbing mostly for that reason. And as I saw value start to pick up, I was like, hey, maybe along with these books that are going to be kind of in my family theoretically forever, why not submit some books that are more of like the spec buys, or hey, I know this could get a decent grade and sell for more. So I kind of fell into it, and then I got excited. The whole unboxing process when you get a submission back from CGC or CBCS, it's a little addictive. It's a little fun to see those grades come back. And so I kind of get caught up in it mostly along those lines. It's kind of half for me, half for kind of resale to fuel more books for my own personal collection later down the road. And I think that's kind of my use case for it anyway.
For sure. Drew, I know you're on the the dealer scene a lot, so you probably graded comics really come into play for you probably a lot on that end. But again, just personally as a personal collector for your own PC, how are you, or how did you dive into, or where are you at just personally with graded comics in your collection?
I really got into it, especially I think I have a different philosophy than a lot of people. I know a lot of people will just, this is my book, I'm going to send it in. I kind of always looked at it as I need to make sure if I'm going to do this that it's worthwhile. Like I don't want to spend time and money investing in a book to have it graded if I'm not going to get an X factor dollar wise out of it. Like I don't want to put $1 into a book and wind up with something like that, even on my personal side. So it really took me a while to get into actually having things graded, and I'm kind of like Bronze Age, where I do it more for my wife. If I drop dead tomorrow, God forbid, sorry, words are hard. God forbid, I wanted her to just be able to say, no, this is what this is, whether it's my AF-15 or Iron Man 55, whatever. It's like, no, this is what it is. It's not just a $45 book or something. And honestly, her directions are called heritage, but I don't prefer graded books just because I like the tactile experience of reading a book a lot of times. But I also realize there's a point where it doesn't make sense to not slab a book. Like I just submitted a bunch of books in October from my PC. It's like I don't need to be reading my low grade FF5 where if I shift wrong, I'm going to pop a staple or something like
Right,
that. It's just it comes a point where it's the responsible thing to do as the current owner of the book to encapsulate them for the protection and preservation of the book moving forward. And that's kind of how I approach it for the most part.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll just throw my 2 cents in there too. It's interesting because I got about 20,000 comics in my collection, and I think I might be over 50 with my last submission graded comics. So I would say about 50. So that's a very, I should do the math, but obviously that's a very, very, fraction of a percent. But I take a little bit from what both of you stated. There's always, as a collector in general, there's always the monetary aspect, the investment aspect there for me, even though I don't plan on selling anything as long as I'm alive, passing it down to my family. But there's a very personal thing, like most of my slabs are Spider-Man and Spider-Man books, and Spider-Man's my favorite superhero. So there's that. I have a couple slabs that are just, because of the cover. So, and yeah, I think there's something aesthetically pleasing about slabs, especially when you consider, we're not just talking CGC here, of course, we're talking slabs in general. So when you get, a company like EGS that can really make more of the presentation be about aesthetics when it comes to the slab of custom labels and things like that. So, and yeah, I agree, Drew, as well, that, there's a point where you're not going to open certain books. So why not have them in a nice little frame with a nice little label? And it's cool. I think collectors in general are heavily about aesthetics a lot. And there is something about holding a book in a nice slab and getting some type of enjoyment out of them. So I have been, and then Bronze Age, like you were saying about the unboxing being addicting, it's so fun. And what I like to do, and now I can make videos about it, but even if I wasn't on YouTube, I still would enjoy doing this, guessing the grade, right? I love preparing my books. I write them down, what grade I think it's going to be, and then I'll submit them. And when they pop up, I don't look. So once I get them, I don't know what they are. And then, I'll come and make a video, but I like to guess and be like, oh yeah, I got that right. Or, oh, I was off by 1 or whatnot. So
I don't know how you guys do that. I'm like spamming the refresh button every day. Like, tell me
I
what
can't
I
anymore,
got.
man. You wait 8 months.
Tough.
Like,
yeah,
it's like, man, I got to strap myself down and not take a peek. Right. But Cool. All right. So we're going to get into one of the main talking points here. Let me say what's up to a few more people. We got the Watcher, the T-Watcher, Matrix, Kyle B, Luis. We got Tommy in the house. What's going on, Tommy? Matrix. We got Lowbrow. What's going on, Lowbrow? All right. Again, folks, if you're just joining, we got Bronze Age Nerd and Como Comics hanging out. Their links are in the description below. Go give them a sub on their YouTube page. And of course, we are all on Instagram as well. So today we are talking everything graded comics. So, all right, let's get into the first kind of heavy talking point. I'm going to grab a little water here. So I did a video some time back discussing how we look at the market value of graded comics. So as you know, all of us here know, and many of you know in the chat, you know, once you get a book and you know put it in a slab and it gets assigned this sticker, you know, it solidifies a grade, at least to the perception of the market. And we know that, you know, when you look at a book that is graded a 9.8, it's already getting sometimes twice, sometimes 3, 4, 5 times that of the grade, just lower in a 9.6, right? But that book raw, that 9.8 book raw is going to go for a substantial amount less than in that graded slab. So we know what grading these books can do to the value on the market. Let's and Drew, I'll start with you here.
Okay.
I think obviously when we look at value on a market of any product or certain whatever, supply and demand, it's very basic. And when supply falls short of demand and demand is surpassing supply, that's what drives the price up, because people are willing to pay for it more when it's scarce on the market or if something's rare on the market. So there's a perception about the demand versus supply of graded books on the market, and this is based on something called the census. So for those that don't know, CGC does keep a census of how many books in that certain grade are out there, right? So for example, we're going to use Ultimate Fallout 4 as an example. This book in a 9.8 is right about at that 3,000 mark the last time I looked. I think it was maybe not even 100 short of that 3,000 mark. So let's give an example of certain individuals that may say, it's a modern book, there's no way that book should be worth this much in a 9.8. There's so many of them out there. Well, keep in mind, folks, there was about 71,000 in the print run of UF4, and there's only about 3,000 in a 9.8. But what I brought up when I talked about this recently was, well, how many potential 9.8s though are still sitting there and just not sent to CGC or CBCS yet? And what is that? If that happens, if that comes to fruition, what can that do to the value of the grade? So Drew, starting off with you, my question around this topic is, are we putting too much value into graded comics, basing supply and demand simply on what's graded right now and not looking at the possibility of what can be graded tomorrow?
I think on modern, especially, yeah, there's definitely a factor of that, because I mean, how many times do you see flex pics on IG or Facebook or wherever where somebody's just, you know, they've got 30 Ultimate Fallout 4s or Edge of Spider-Verse 2s, you know, the Riri Williams Invincible Iron Man books. They're just, you know, there are all these people that have just stockpiled this stuff. I mean, hell, even myself, I've got 2 copies of Ultimate Fallout that I've never sent in. One of them I just took out of the bag a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, and those are easily 9.8 candidates. So they're out there. The thing is, to your point leading into this, it's the demand. I mean, when people decide they want something, they want it right now. And you can also, when you control the supply, So everybody's hoarding all these books, right? They're stockpiling them. When you control the supply, you can artificially inflate the price by withholding it, right? Especially when you hit the high demand points. So I have zeroed out in my mind when we get the next Edge of Spider-Verse trailer, you're going to see a trickle of Ultimate Fallout 4 is coming out, right? So that's going to be that constricted supply starting to filter out to take advantage of that increased price as demand has gone up, because now Miles is, I mean, not that he's ever too far out of focus for most people, but now, he's right back front and center. I don't think Kyle's wrong at all.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that's another thing is the backlog. I mean, yeah, how many are sitting there to when they finally catch up? One day, they update their census and there's like 500 added to the census.
Yeah, it hops 12 to 20% or something like that. So I think there's definitely some high likelihood that certain books are going to be diluted over time. It's just natural. Now, when you start getting into, I think, modern books, copper books, similar to a slightly lesser extent, you start getting into bronze and silver. For the most part, you're not going to see enough volume change on those, particularly in high grades, where it's going to move the needle much. So depending on which end of the pool you're swimming in here, it's going to have a greater impact, I think.
I hear you. Bronze Age. So and I like that Kyle brought up about backlog, and we if CGC and CBCS, the big two, if people were getting their books back quicker, that could change both, what's showing up on the census, and it could kind of be changing how people submit, or even how they demand, the books on the market. So Bronze Age, just weigh in here. What do you think about us really paying attention to census numbers and telling us these are scarce on the market, I need this now?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic. I think the thing that sticks out to me are a couple factors, and I guess you could kind of break it up into short term and long term, and Drew touched on this a bit too. When it comes to short term, it seems like, especially over the last year and a half, 2 years, it's definitely seems to have cooled a little bit, but we have this kind of blood in the water mentality when something comes out. Like if we got news tomorrow, since we're talking about Ultimate Fallout so much, if we got news tomorrow that Miles has been cast for the MCU, that book would inevitably jump. It would be, it doesn't matter for a short-term period how many copies are out there. Seemingly, it might actually matter in reality, but people will still hop on it. And then they'll hop on lower grade versions of that same book, all those kinds of things. And it's really an interesting thing that happens. But it does make me wonder when you look at baseball card grading, or sports card grading, I should say, has a little bit longer history. And when you look at the census and how much it matters going into the long-term speculation, it does make you wonder, as we have all these copies that are going to be hitting the market at a future date. And, let's say that casting announcement did happen for Miles, how many more people would then send their copies in addition to the people that already have them waiting in the queue or already have them graded? And it makes me wonder, if it depends on your strategy, I think, is kind of how much you have to look at it. Are you in this for the MCU announcement, wait for the trailer, I'm going to sell the book? Are you in this for hold for 40, 50 years thinking that Miles Morales is every bit the next Peter Parker, and 60 years from now we'll be talking about him and really looking at those books in a serious way? I think that all kind of matters, and you have to kind of weigh those questions on yourself, because I think that there is definitely something to be said for the enormous number of modern books, but we've seen it time and time again. All these books have huge print runs. New Mutants 98 has a massive print run that can still be worth big bucks because of that Deadpool appearance. So I really have to wonder, does it matter too much in this kind of short or midterm, and is it only going to matter in the long term?
Right. Great points. Yeah. And I think, one thing to take out of, what both you guys said is that the way, and I talk about this all the time, the way supply and demand works, people forget. People get so focused on print run. Like you were just saying, I think Deadpool's first appearance has over 400,000. I don't think it's in the millions, but I think it's somewhere around 500,000, if I can remember.
Yeah.
But
it's
yeah, it still commands that value. And that's because we have to remember that scarcity on the market means what's available on the market. Like Drew was saying, there's people that stockpile this stuff and they're holding it. There could be 500,000 books printed, but if there's only 1,000 of them on the market at any given time and 2,000 people want that book, they're gonna battle to get that book in terms of how they claw at that demand, and it's going to raise that value. So again, supply and demand equates to the supply available on the market at any given time. And when we become so reactionary to speculative, factors like a trailer, a casting, and so forth, and we want that book now, that scarcity in that moment is very real because we're bottlenecking. It's just like, remember the chicken sandwich from Popeyes? I don't know if you guys remember when that was launched and somebody got shot and killed. That's saying the laughing matter. Somebody literally got shot and killed over it because they were fighting over like the last one at a local Popeyes. It's crazy, but it's not like chicken is in scarce supply. It's not like the batter. It's not like Popeyes is going anywhere. They're short on employees or they're not shipping more frozen chicken in or buns in. No, but just the demand got so high that people were rushing into it and they were out of the supply at the store before they put their next order in and so forth. So that's like just a different example of how, what they want isn't there in that moment, and whatever's on the market is going to dictate what that value is going to do as it equates to the demand. So great points from both of you. Now, in Bronze Age, we'll start with you on this one. We used a key comic to talk about this. I want to kind of switch gears and talk about not so key comics. And I talked about this recently as well, too. So when we have a book that is scarce in numbers on the census, okay? So again, UF4 3009.8s in the grand scheme of things, especially of a 70,000+ print run, that's a pretty small number considering the high demand for that book. But let's take a book that maybe, maybe it's a modern book. Maybe it's it has some spec possibility to it. Maybe it's a second print of a first appearance from the 90s. Maybe it's an origin story of a character that's already shown up a few times. And, maybe it can demand $5 to $10 on the market. And then we get a little spec talking and maybe that price dries up a little more. And then you go and look at the census and there's 29.8s. There's 29.8s. Maybe they were selling for 80, 90 bucks. And then one of us, we're collectors on a budget. Maybe I can't speak for all you guys. I'm speaking for myself. But as a collector, as somebody who makes YouTube videos that cares about collectors on a budget, maybe I'm talking about, more affordable possible spec books that might be worth looking at. And I talk about this book and I say, look, you might be able to find this book for under $20 raw. Low risk, something could come out of it because of the MCU. And then because I have an audience, people are hopping onto eBay or what, I was going to say or whatnot, but literally or whatnot. The app, isn't it funny how we use that term now is because it's an actual app, but and they're like, well, if Journo talked about it, I'm getting that FOMO. If Como talked about it, if Bronze Age talked about it, I'm getting that FOMO. I got to go look, right? And then all of a sudden, this book in a 9.8, that was maybe, like I said, there's a couple out there selling for 80, 90 bucks. It sells for $500. $500 because some guy on YouTube in front of a screen said, this might be a decent $20 and under spec book.
There's nothing more terrifying to me as a content creator than when I talk about a book and 2 weeks later I open Key Collector and there's that green arrow next to it. It's like, oh God, please tell me that wasn't me.
Oh man, yeah. So okay. So basically, my point is this. This is different. You both talked about, and Drew, you talked about how you know if it's something like Miles in a first appearance, that scarcity on the market is gonna be for what's available right now. I want it right now. But when you look at something like this and they say, oh man, there's only 29.8s on the census, Bronze Age. I gotta ask you, what comes to mind and how what are you thinking when you see something like this going on?
Yeah, it's interesting. Primarily, I'm thinking there's got to be better lottery tickets out there. Is the first thing I think of, and better uses for money. But you know, it's easy to say that, but then if that does pay off for that person, and let's say that rumor that influencer talked about does come to pass, and then all of a sudden that $500 book is a $1,500 book, and everyone else is racing to get theirs submitted to different grading services. There is a very real possibility it could pay off, but generally when I see something like that, I really cringe. Um, it's different if it's a book you love and it's for your personal collection. Well, I guess my advice would still kind of be the same, because I'd say, hey, wait and
Right.
see how it all shakes out. Maybe you can get that book later on, or just go find a raw like you were talking about and do your own submission. But when you see those crazy prices on those low pop, you know, sort of 9.8s or whatever, I just every single time I can't understand like thought process behind somebody that wants to pull the trigger on that, unless they're just, you know, Scrooge McDuck diving through the pile of gold coins or something like that. It's a little different story for those types of people, you know, that stuff. It's like probably like day trading to them. But the people that are buying that thinking that's going to pay off, it's a surefire thing. That's what I think about when I hear something like that, and when I see that happening in the hobby, is what kind of impacts that can have on somebody. Because for some of those people that are buying that, they have kind of that addiction to the FOMO that I was talking about a little bit at the front of the show, and that's a lot of diapers, or that's a lot of, you know, milk and bread for their family or something like that. And that's kind of where I come at those things. You know, I'm always a strike while the market's cold kind of a thing. You know, look for those types of books. And so I hope that they're kind of, you know, maybe more doing that. But when one of us talks about something like that, and people do kind of, you know, put the searchlight, the eye of Sauron goes on that book, it definitely can drive that stuff. And I just really urge caution for people with their dollars when it comes to that kind of stuff personally.
Well, let me ask you, before we let Drew chime in here, I want to ask you this too specifically. Do you feel that in these unique situations, do you think the census is playing a part?
It does, and it doesn't to an extent. It really is going to depend on the book. And I'm trying to give a great example off the top of my head, but it's kind of hard to do.
I'll give you an example,
Sure.
because this is a real situation. And look, I just want to make this clear too. I'm going to give an example of, there was a couple people that talked about it on YouTube, and I am in no way speaking negative of these YouTubers. Like, they were simply just saying, you know, this could be a cheat. Yeah, they weren't telling you to go buy the book or spend $500 on a graded copy. They weren't. So I want to make that clear. But there was a book that recently did this, and it's a perfect example. And it was Uncanny 282, the second appearance, the second print, the first appearance of Gambit. But again, second print, gold cover. So there's your example. And there was only like 22 9.8s on the census.
Right. And that to me is, you know, so if you guys aren't familiar with me on YouTube, I make a series of videos called Top 5 Not to Buy. And the whole root of that is looking at a thing like, you know, for example, you know, CBSI Hot 10 or Key Collector Trending 20 or whatever, and picking out books that I think are just the worst possible investment out of those books. I'm not saying they all are bad investments. Some of those are great investments. Some of those really pay off for people. But I look at those ones. Uncanny 282 second printing is one that definitely ended up on my list. And the reason why is because it is that, you know, the low pop, people are going to go run out for it. But also a ton of people are now submitting that book to CGC or CBCS or whatever grading service you want to use. And, well, you know, primarily it's probably going to be CGC. And once that happens, you know, what's Bishop going to do? Is he going to appear in the MCU by the time the people get those books back? Almost certainly not. I mean, there's a 0.01% chance that that's going to happen.
Right.
And if that does happen, fantastic payday for those people. If it doesn't happen, what are you going after? Like, that's just so bizarre to me. And that doesn't even get into the whole thing about first versus second print there, which is a whole different part of that scenario. There's a ton of that book out there. And so it kind of makes sense, hey, maybe second print's a little bit more rare and less submitted, so the population's lower, but that's a temporary thing. That is if you had that book and you were one of those 20 people that for whatever reason submitted that book, congratulations.
Yeah,
you just got paid.
Right. Okay. So Drew, kind of playing off of what Bronze just said too. I'll bring up kind of another example because he made a good point about like, by the time, again, we're talking about by the time, first off, if a YouTuber talks about something and everyone's rushing to get it, then not only are people rushing to buy it, but that anybody that's selling or flipping comics is rushing to get them out to CGC. Oh, shoot. This second appearance of this mass-produced 90s book is getting hot, and a 9.8 selling for 500. Shoot, I got like 8 copies of those. I'm sending them all to CGC. So again, and then knowing how CGC's turnaround is slow. I mean, say if it was another book, and of course, somebody like Bishop could show up in the MCU, but say it was somebody maybe more all the X-Men, it's just like it's fog there. We don't know much of anything going on. But
well, look at Carnage. Carnage is an example. There's a second print, the silver second print of 361.
Specific to the low again the very low census count, and then sending those in before the spec happens, because I mean it can essentially, the spec could be gone by the time they even get those books back.
Exactly. And I think, to quote the Matt Damon commercial, which I know it's actually from something else, fortune favors the bold, right? So if you're ahead of the market and you're forward thinking, you're like, I've got this book, it looks great, I'm going to slab it and get it back, submit it. It comes back at 9.8, the spec hits, and you're that much further ahead than everybody else. To throw another cliche out there, the early bird gets the worm. So you've gone out there, you've submitted the book, everybody else is looking at you like you've got 2 heads because you wasted good money and good time to submit this thing. And now all of a sudden you're standing here, not holding the bag, but I mean, you're in peak position. You have what everybody all of a sudden wants. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be standing there holding stuff people still don't want, but every once in a while it does hit. And I think that's just, it's a different type of risk, really, at that point, because another advantage these people have, they're submitting things that are not particularly valuable when they do send them in. So they can do bulk submissions and get it out for cheap. And if you use FastPass, you could shave a little time. But I think it's a gamble in the long run for the most part. I don't think it pays off most of the time, but when you hit, right?
Absolutely. I want to say thank you to AOA again for the super chat. He's like, talk these books up. Bye DW retail incentives. Let's talk about them.
Where's my can of spinach at?
I hope you already have them at CGC, and I hope they've been there for 6 months, because if you haven't yet, and we're talking about it today, by the time you get them back, it's gonna, you miss the train. I like what Swaggle just said here. He said, the people who had the foresight to Great White Vision before WandaVision made a killing. And this is, I think, imperative to part of what we're talking about. You have the foresight, you send them in, and if you have these books in a 9.8 or even, lower grades, whatever. But the 9.8 went crazy. Obviously, I think it hit past 1,500. Then you had them ready. When that hit, you were able to make that money and that profit at the peak. But if you waited till midnight and you're like, oh, shoot, there's White Vision, I have 20 copies of those, and you went and grabbed them out and said, I'm about to go send them all out to CGC. Okay, look, you 16 of them came back 9.8s, but now the book has dropped like 65% in value. So, I think for me, as collectors, the point I want to knock home here is, the census matters. And I think, Drew, Bronze Age, you both made good points to why, especially for, books that are solidified, and especially for older books to where the shifting of the census, especially in high grade, isn't going to do too much craziness, right? Outside of that, if you're looking at books that have very low census counts, don't just look at it as being something that's scarce or rare. Look at it as possibly being something that nobody gave a damn to send into CGC in the first place. And that's why there's not that many out there. Mm-hmm. So you got to really take heed, look at each situation individually, respective to their situations, to the individual book. And you really got to be smart. And at the end of the day, I think you both use some keywords, the risks, the gambles. That's what it is often, especially, if you miss the boat and these things are already peaking in price. And at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, there's two things. Either you're here for the risk, and you're willing to take that risk, or you really are just here because you love that character. So you might just want to wait it out and see if some of these books drop. But man, good stuff, guys. So
one more point about that though that I want to make real fast. So and it's kind of to acknowledge a point that Ultra Maximus is in here. He's talking about 282 and kind of going back to that point, and kind of touches on what Swagglehouse said too. If you are in this because you think you're out on this to make some money, which I don't have any problem with, I think that's a perfectly valid way to collect comic books. If you're willing to call your shot, if you are looking at the future, I'll say MCU because almost all speculation these days is based off of the MCU. It just is. Not all of it, but most of it. If you really want to say like, hey, I have this huge belief in Bishop, or I have this huge belief in Cardiac, or, if you have some obscure hero or villain that you're like, I can just see it happening. I can see how this is going to play out. I can see how they're going to introduce this character. And I don't think anybody else is looking there. Go for it. Find, like with 282, you'd find the second print or whatever. Be the person who has that graded and can beat the curve. My only advice then would be just don't go overboard on that. Really call your shot. Pick your book or two or whatever your budget is. And then, feel free to do that. Because that to me, there's been times where I've kicked myself and this has happened. And it's been like, man, I knew that was going to happen and I didn't act on it. And if you have that kind of gut feeling, don't have that kind of regret if that's really what you're in this for. That'd be my advice.
Dude, I tell you, I got a Facebook group, kind of local friends and, just people around the area. I ran across the Gleason variant back before it was a thing. That Spider-Man 55 that blew up, right? How many printings?
Right.
Before it became a thing, you could go to his website. You could order 9.8 trade dress copies for $100. You can get signed ones for 125. You get virgins, all this. I literally sent the link to this book to my Facebook group and said, hey guys, I think this is going to be huge. I didn't order any of them. Guys in the group who ordered the book were doubling their money based off advice I gave and didn't act on. So it's just, I didn't want to put the money in it. So having the intestinal fortitude to do that is a big thing. But I wanted to one thing back around on that West Coast Adventures 45. Mm-hmm. If you submitted your books when that book dropped, right now you could have sold those books raw for more than what they're going for in anything under a 9.8. So if you submitted and got a 9.2, a 9.4, a 9.6, that book was what, 150, 175 bucks raw at the peak.
Yep.
90-day average on a 9.2 is 109, or 9.4 is 121, and a 9.6 is 186 with the last sale of 145.
Wow. That is great.
So for perspective.
Data. Yes. Wow.
Yep.
Crazy. Thank you for sharing that. That sums it up right there, man. I want to say too, what's funny is I just had, I purchase off of mycomicshop.com and I'll put things on my want list and you'll get an email saying, oh, we got this book in. And it was, what book is it? It's Thunderbolts 1 something. It's where like Black Widow is posing as Yelena, but it's like where I forget, but it's like, you know, semi little key spec on it, and it was like $6, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm not paying $6 right now. And I thought to myself right now, well, hey, I mean, that could, and I'm like, I'm good. If it's worth $50 a month for now. So I'm bringing this up just to show all you guys, like, you know, as collectors, don't always get caught up on, you know, the risk of the investment side. Like I said, unless you're here for that, unless you're a gambling man or gambling woman, and that's what you're here for. Me, I love to focus on the investment side of comic books. But I'll tell you, if I drown myself in the investment side of comic books, I'm not going to love what I'm doing. So, you know, for me right there, I can live with myself saying I'll pass because I don't really care about Thunderbolts at all. I have nothing here in the heart for that. So if it ends up being worth money and I missed out, I might say, God darn it, Chris, you know, you missed out, but I'll have a little chuckle and move on. So
yeah, I agree. I definitely go down the rabbit hole where I get too focused on buying things for the business, and I look back and it's been 5 months. I haven't bought anything for me, so I get that. I get that
for sure. All right, guys, we're gonna. Oh, Bronze, you got something?
Oh, I was disagreeing.
Okay, for sure.
It can happen.
I do want to shift gears real quick, but before we do, a moment from your spot. No, I'm just kidding. I am going to take a minute to check out the Whatnot app because I want to give something away today, guys. And for those that weren't here in the beginning of the show, we're trying to reach 475 followers on the Whatnot app for me to give away this prize here. And I'll talk about the book again. Let's see where we're at. Looks like we got a couple more followers. So we are still in need. And the app doesn't. I think we're in need of 25 followers on the Whatnot app still. Follow me at Journos Comics. No underscore. That's down there on the rolling banner there. If we reach 475 today, I'm going to be giving away this The Boys #1. This is the Gem Mint Comic Tom exclusive variant. I'll throw in this Scout digital comic pack right here too. Maybe I'll even throw in some random other comic, and hey, you'll get a Journos Comic sticker as well. How about that? I mean, that's the prize right there, right? So again, just 25 more followers on the Whatnot app. I'll check in after this next segment, but we're going to move it along. I do want to say what's up to a few more folks too. Matt Stadge, DJ Moonchild, Daniel, GT Key. Thank you guys for being here. Charlotte, what's going on, Charlotte? All right, folks, we're gonna dive into another talking point. Now, this might get heavy. Oh man, Drew, we're gonna start off with you with this one.
All right, let's do it.
I want to talk about grade validity.
Yeah,
and you know, again, this is something else that I talked some months back with Swaggle. We had a good stream talking about this, but there's obviously a lot of talk and concern among content creators, just among people in forums and on social media within the hobby, that are, have valid concerns about the grading process. And for me, I question the lack of transparency from the grading process, especially from the big two, from CGC and CBCS. At least with CBCS, their grader notes are more available. So I think that adds more transparency. With CGC, you don't get them for free, and they're not always there. Like, I've literally had books that came back 9.0s that had no grader notes. And I don't think I've ever had a book 9.4 and higher from CGC that have had grader notes. And again, I haven't submitted crazy amounts, but from my sample size, no book 4.0, 4.6, or excuse me, 9.4, 9.6, 9.8, no grader notes at all. We finally did get a little video, I believe last year, released by CGC with the guy sitting there saying, this is kind of what we do. I personally don't think you scratch the surface. We also know that there is a huge gap between the value of a 9.6 and a 9.8.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I do think there's valid argument that sometimes you can't tell the difference between a 9.6 and a 9.8. And then there's the questionable times where, like for me, I got back an Amazing Spider-Man book that had 5 spine ticks that color broke deeply, had a blended edge and some other flaws, and it came back at 9.8. What are your thoughts currently?
Wow.
And again, this isn't just CGC, I mean, you can focus on CGC or CBCS if you want to, but just in general for graded comics, what is your current thoughts on the state of grade validity?
Well, I'll just say before I go into this, I have paid memberships to both CBCS and CGC. So, they both get my money. And I've been a massive proponent, I can't talk tonight, sorry, of buying the book, not the grade, for years. I mean, I can think of at least 5 years back, and that's the way I was looking at it, because you go to shows, and you're sitting there, you're staring at just walls of slabs, and hopefully you have the opportunity, if you're really hunting a book, to be able to compare and contrast multiple copies before you settle on one. If you're really fortunate, you can even get some that are, the same grade, or, half a point plus or minus. And a lot of times I've seen books that are graded, they may be the lower grade of the book, but they present better than the higher grade book. And I think that's something that can be hard for people to understand, is that, I mean, if we want to go really philosophical here, grading is an art. It's not a science, right? It's opinion. It's not a formula you can just plug into any human being and get the exact same result every time, which is why we have 3 graders and their grades are averaged to actually assign the grade, right? Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Has anybody seen, that's another thing. Have we seen the process too? That's another big question, but go ahead, go on.
And maybe that's something, I mean, if we want to go down that rabbit hole briefly, maybe that's something we can learn from the toy industry, because I know I've seen toy companies where they'll actually provide subgrades, right? So you'll have the bubble grade, the figure grade, and I think it's the card grade, and you actually see the metadata that goes into the overall grade. So maybe that's something that we could eventually incorporate into the comics world, where we could get a little more granular and have some insight, even if it's just grader 1 grade, grader 2 grade, what have you, right? But ultimately, when it comes down to it, it is definitely possible to have a lower grade book that looks better than a higher grade book, which is where a lot of this can come from. Whether it's, you've got a loose centerfold, whether it's at 1 staple or 2, there are those defects that can happen that drop the grade, but don't drop the presentability of the book. On the other end, I think where I've seen some issues is the quality control after the grading. So like books that become damaged in encapsulation, right? Or damaged in transit. And I don't know how we're going to necessarily account for that, especially over the last couple of years, where they've just been throwing bodies at the problem. So you've got people who clearly aren't fully trained that are just being thrown at it, because we need warm bodies to move through this massive pile of work that's been dumped on us. So I suspect that we may see books that have been graded in the last couple of years for years down the line, where the label says one thing, but you look at the book and it's clearly not that.
That's a good point too, and I want to make it known, like, recent CGC books, they're wiggling around in that.
In the rattle.
Yeah. So if even if the UPS guy or whatever is just having a field day, throwing them on the truck, throwing them on, it's like, I mean, so yeah, well, that's a whole nother question of grade validity, because we're not even talking about the validity of the graders looking at the book and assigning a grade, but does that sticker grade hold through time if the book is vulnerable to damages at that point?
I'm almost at the point where I have to kind of feel sorry for CGC, because so many of the problems of the last 5 years have been brought on by their own making. From Frankenslab, when we first got the updated holder where they were literally pressing the books between the two sheets of Mylar inside the inner well, then they're like, okay, that doesn't work. That's damaging books. Holy Newton rings. So then we went back to an inner well, but it was still so tight on the encapsulation. Everything was still having Newton rings. Now we've got rattly books. It's like we cannot seem to get this fixed to where the inner holder or the inner well and the outer well play nice to where it doesn't impact the presentation of the book on their end. Whereas I really like CBCS's new cases, but there's still a lot of hesitancy in the market with some people to really go after CBCS. So we've got ourselves in a pickle.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that one before the night is over for sure.
I figured
Bronze Age thoughts, grade validity, and we actually fleshed out kind of two different perspectives now to look at grade validity as well.
Yeah. So here's my thing, and this is my biggest point when it comes to grading, primarily with the big two, primarily with CGC and CBCS. There is no validity until there's more transparency. And except the one exception is how much validity we as a market assign. And so far, it surprises me how much blind faith we've still had, speaking generally as a market, in that validity. Here's my one thing about, I'll use CGC because Mark Nelson's the one that said this. Mark Nelson has made a comment at least a couple times now that CGC wants to grade and take into account known issues within a run for that particular issue of the comic book. Mm-hmm. And where I get caught up on that is think about Marvel, which is, most of the market right now is Marvel. When you think about their paper, their coverless books, where it's basically an interior page that's used as a cover, bad quality paper. How come so many of those, if we're lucky, get a 9.8 when you've established the top end of that bell curve of what should be possible, but yet 9.8 still seems to be the cap of that? And even then, it's still hard to get those 9.8s when we know that almost every corner is going to have something. It doesn't happen every single time. Like, luckily, you sometimes get a good cut and you get that book out there. But it just seems like, I know this is something that you've talked about before, Chris. The difference between a 9.6 and a 9.8 sometimes is ephemeral. It doesn't really, it's not something that we can really see as the end user. And maybe in some cases that's because the book did shift around in the slab afterwards and the corner rubbed. But I don't really buy that, just from my own experience seeing brand new comic books and just kind of focusing on brand new comic books for a second. Those corners happen, and sometimes they get a 9.8 and sometimes they get a 9.6. And yes, it is a bit of an art form, but without that transparency piece that I brought up at the beginning, what I was talking about here, how am I supposed to know what my book's going to get? There is a little bit of hope involved, and you can be very careful and only submit books that are perfect, and you'll get those 9.8s that you're probably looking for in most cases with those modern books. But if the grading criteria is so wishy-washy, then what are we even doing? And again, primarily I'm speaking about CGC with that. CBCS at least does offer those grader notes for their books. But with CGC, every book below a 10 should have grader notes.
Agreed. 100%.
What went wrong?
Yep.
I need that transparency. I need to know more about what your process and what you guys say in an interview with an influencer or on social media. Show me the process. Show me the process behind the scenes once. A to Z. At least. That's the bare minimum that I need to feel fully confident in those grades. And until then, I'll only trust it as far as the market trusts it.
I like what both of you had to say, because I think, Drew, you brought the perspective of how the foundation of the industry should kind of be set, and then, Bronze Age, I feel you brought in that kind of playing the devil's advocate and saying, look, though, this is why I can't trust that foundation, so to say. So I like that nobody here is either being extremely blind, saying, champion this because it's perfect, but then we're not over here, creating conspiracy theories and saying that CGC is manipulating the market because they're, purposely dwarfing the amount of 9.8s or giving more 9.8. And again, I'm not saying that happens or not, but we're not going to sit here and speculate on that right now. We're talking about the foundations of the grading industry and the grading process. in Bronze Age, I really do agree with you. I agree that it's not necessarily that the grades aren't valid, but we have every right to question them because we don't know. We can't validate them ourselves. So it's like, well, we just got to trust what they say, or we got to trust that it's because of this. We deserve, in my humble opinion, we deserve transparency. And I believe, at least with CGC, it does start with grader notes. I mean, grader notes, without doing anything else, are almost the foundation of transparency, because at least if a book gets a 9.8, you know exactly why. And I'm going to give an example here. And guys, I'm not, using EGS as an example to say they're better than anyone else. I'm just, this is just an example of what I'm talking about. And EGS 9.8 gets the grader's note of corner scuff top, bottom left front cover. Oh, corner scuff, top and bottom of the front left cover. So it just means that on the top and bottom of the spine, there's a little bit of scuff on both ends. So that could have happened like in the shipment process or whatnot, got a little rub, but and that's what really separates the 9.9s and the 10s. I think people argue, well, why aren't more books 9.9s or 10s? Look, I'm not going to argue that personally, because I think you got to understand, I think the 9.9s and the 10s are really come down to maybe a dull cut, or if they're shipped appropriately from Diamond and they they weren't thrown around by UPS, whatever. But I know at least with this why it got a 9.8. I got to pause my thought process real quick. Marvel Goddess, thank you so much for the support with the super chat. Definitely appreciated.
And the very nice follow-up comment.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes. This is why we're here, guys. This is why we're here. But just to finalize my statement, there's a lot more they can do, in my opinion, than grader notes. But it starts there. So let me ask you this, and then we'll go backwards. Bronze Age, I'll ask you this, and then Drew, I want you to answer this too.
Sure.
So kind of coming back around, do you feel that CGC, and now we are focused on CGC, do you think CGC is not pushing grader notes because they are, in a sense, maybe too comfortable? I don't want to use the terms cocky or ego, or too egotistical. I don't want to go that far, but
complacent.
Do you feel that at least, when the executives get together and they're looking at how, their business model, do you feel that maybe it's just, well, we can consolidate our resources. We could save money and not allocate resources for grader notes for every books because we can, because there's already that perception on the market. Do you think maybe that's kind of what's going on, or do you think it's something completely different?
Yeah, I think a bit of that ties into something that, especially when people share their opinions about CGC, that I've had to think about, is there is sort of this like perception that they're doing things, the conspiracy theorists do come out, and we'll get too far into that, but this is kind of one of those topics where people kind of do glom onto that a little bit, and they think that it's, some sort of, well, we don't have to, or we can be cheaper about it. And I think there's a kernel of truth to that. But I think the bigger thing is, never assume malice when incompetence is equally as possible of a solution. And I think that really, and incompetence may seem a little harsh, but I'm just saying that I don't think that anything that we don't like about CGC is them going, whole hog and being like, this is how we're going to do it, and we don't care what people think. And I think most of those situations are actually more, hey, they're super busy. Even though they keep raising rates, people keep sending in books at really high numbers. And so when they're trying to be on top of the situation as it is right now, how much can we really assume that they're going to be agile and really want to change things and try to incorporate new processes? Now, I personally think for the money that we pay, that grader notes should be involved. I think that is, something that, even if it's the second grader taking notes on what the first grader said, or if it's the person who's going to eventually encapsulate the book taking notes of just like one or two things, just give me the main two flaws that held it back. I think that would go a long way towards that transparency piece, which is super important to me. But at the same time, I understand it. I get why they're not, reinventing the wheel for them right now. If people did vote with their dollars and started moving towards CBCS more because they're showing them, hey, we want those grader notes, that's why we're submitting more to CBCS or EGS, then that would obviously result in CGC feeling a need to change. But right now, they're just playing catch up. It feels like, they're like firing on all cylinders as far as they're concerned. They probably are aware of a few of their weaknesses. They're probably aware of the perception of their services, but we're not giving them a monetary reason to change from what I can tell. And until that happens, I don't see why they would, unless they feel like, they have some reason to, or they're finally getting caught up, or, they train all those new people. Then maybe they would roll out some of that stuff as kind of like a breadcrumb for people to follow. But I just don't see him changing anytime soon. And I don't really kind of hold it against him at this point either, which is, it's funny. I don't like that they don't do that, but I also understand it.
Right. Appreciate it. Drew, what your thoughts on the lack of grader notes from CGC? What's their mentality here?
I think Bronze Age hit it on the head. They don't have to. It's been a gripe in the community for years and years and years now. They haven't changed it. They've made graders notes maybe slightly more accessible, but at the same time, they're also still not providing any details. It's like, how can you get a 9.0, a 9.2, or 9.4 that has 0 graders notes? I have a CBCS 9.6 book that has 5 graders notes listed. Like, they get down and granular and tell you exactly why this book is not a 9.8, but I can't find out why my 9.2 CGC book is 9.2 and not a 9.4 or a 9.6 or a 9.8. It doesn't make sense. I think, just as he said, as long as everyone continues to send them books and doesn't withhold their services or go to a competition, they have no incentive to change. They can just continue on with the status quo until there's some sort of happening, whether that's people stop sending, or I don't know how you can publicly shame them to the point where they do anything or something like that. But it's like there has to be some catalyst for them to change.
They got to hire. We got to hire Ray Donovan to.
There you go. There you go. But I don't think they have a desire to change. I think they're, as has been said, right now they are just 100% focused forward on trying to get through the work that they have. And I don't think innovation or correction of errors is really anything that's front of mind, at least not on something that's an aggravation point for the community versus something that's an actual pain point or breakage in the process.
Right. I just want to say, I love that right now we're approaching this not even from a collector standpoint, but from a business standpoint. Both of your guys' answers and how we're looking at this. And for those watching, I want to encourage you all. This is a huge problem that I see within this community. We as collectors react with emotions, and anytime there's something that we don't like, we, like Bronze was saying, we assume, malicious intent, or we go to some crazy extremes of some types of conspiracy theories. And because this community is heavily on social media, that rhetoric and that dialogue gets regurgitated really easily and really fast. And then it does this, and then it becomes a telephone game, and then it becomes groupthink. We don't and I see the same thing when people talk about like fair market value, of books and like the market. I can tell that people are like throwing out, buzzwords, bubbles and corrections, but they're not really understanding it. They just know that they heard somebody say that somewhere else, and now it's getting regurgitated without an actual thought-provoking understanding or a real conceptual understanding of what they're talking about. All of this stuff boils down to business and business decisions so much. And I just want to reiterate too that we're not even going to talk about is CGC manipulating the market tonight. We're not even going there, because there's a better way to dive into these issues and to come to a possible solution. And really, guys, we got to be Rosa Parks, not getting off the bus. And what I mean by that is, I can guarantee you, CGC isn't sitting there saying, "Hey, we gotta give these people a 9.6s to make sure that the values stay up on the secondary market," or, "Hey, our buddy is submitting 100 books, let's get them all 9.8s." Instead of doing that, I can guarantee you, we can look at more of a situation where when the executives sit down at the board, at the table, they're sitting there saying, how do we maximize our profits and continue to drive our revenues? And it's that simple. Now, I'm not saying that the decisions that they come to are good ones that we're going to agree with, but just like Ron was saying, it doesn't mean they're inherently malicious. It comes down to business decisions, and they're going to look at the fact that what's making us money, what's hurting us, and what can we change to make more money. And I guarantee you, they're putting all these things on the table. And right now, I can guarantee you, they're putting it. If they're putting out, what can we change? What can bring us more money? And they list better slabs, faster turnaround time. Maybe adding more people at the call center to answer the phones. That can. Raising prices, lowering prices, changing the tiers, adding grader notes. I guarantee you that they're looking at, what's next on our list? Adding grader notes. So guys, what do you think? Adding grader notes, is this going to maximize our profits? No? Okay, next.
Yeah, are you going to hire somebody to help ship books out? Or are you going to hire somebody to enter data on graders notes that your customer may or may not use even?
Right. And unfortunately, while it seems like they're not doing any of these things, it seems like, well, they're not upping, turnaround time. They're not, the quality control, all these things. And somebody commented here. Let me see if I could find this comment. Because right here. Vaughn said, I think CGC put profits over quality control until it got out of hand and they knew something had to be done. So what I think is going on now is, I do think there was a point in time where, and whether or not they were even conscious of putting profits over quality, maybe they just didn't understand how to get to that better quality. But I think they realize now that the foundation cracked in more than one spot, and it's cracking, and they're in a rush to try to figure out how to fix this. And I think it's going to take a long time before we see any of these things. But I do believe, this is my final statement on this, and I'll let you guys get a final word, and then we'll go into our final talking point of the night. But my final word on this is, I do have faith that the grading industry in general is going to continue to evolve. But I do believe that CGC, even though at times I may feel like they may think they're Rome and they're too big to fail, but even Rome felt right. It's like, I do think they understand that they're going to have to evolve. They're going to have to change things. They can't keep up with their own accepted status quo at some point. But I do think they know that they don't have to rush anything. They're going to continue to maximize their profits and then slowly allocate their resources to where that long-term goal, they can still reach it to where folks are still sending them money, years from now. So I'll let you guys get final word. Drew, final word.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between turning a fishing boat and turning an oil tanker, right? So is your company smaller, you can be more not reactionary. You can react faster, right? You can make bigger, more substantial changes in your direction with less resistance than when you're this big hulking machine that's, as established and just weighty as CGC is. Also, it's not like they were all these years ago. Now you've got investment groups, you've got corporate entities that own them. So all of this stuff that previously, when they were smaller, could just come up to this level of corporate discussion. Well, now it's got to go up past the board, and the CEO here, where you've got to make sure that your people that are cutting the checks and covering the bills are okay with it too. So I think that's a consideration there as well. And I think every business it's in their best interest to have happy customers, and it's just how long does it take the dissatisfaction to reach the ears of the people who can actually make change and address those issues.
Absolutely. Bronze Age.
Yeah, I just would kind of, to reiterate a little bit what Drew's saying there, to kind of echo some of the stuff we've said here. I would really encourage people that do have these issues to continue to be vocal about it, and to continue to kind of let CGC know. And I mean, there's plenty of people, and I totally understand this. There's people that say, hey, we should boycott CGC, and there's people that say, I'm never going to use CGC again. And I get that. That's totally your decision. But you can still be a customer and still get your voice, and your point across. Sometimes that's even heard a little bit more with open ears, because you're saying, hey, I'm going to continue to support you, but if you could improve this, I would appreciate it.
Right.
You can email them. You can say it on social media. You can say it in their comment section. Some of that's going to get through. If enough of us do that, at some point you have to believe that they're going to listen. And people say, oh, well, CGC will never change. You have to remember, some people may not be aware of this either. CGC did do, and is, I think, currently still doing, a pilot program to improve some of their grading processes. They're taking some new submissions, running them through a different test grading process as a test, and seeing how those things go. That's how come you have some people that are submitting books and getting them back within a month without fast track. We're seeing that happen. So we do know that they are interested in trying to improve things. It's exactly like Drew said, trying to turn that oil tanker. They're not as agile as, like, say, probably Tony is at EGS. They're probably going to have to take a little bit more time to sort of turn things around. And you have to weigh that against how much money people are spending with them to continue to submit these books. Do you really expect them to stop everything and change these things that we don't like? Or is it really going to be more of a slow evolution? Yeah. And you just have to kind of look at it practically from a business perspective. That doesn't mean we have to be happy with it, but that's just how it's going to be.
Right. Exactly. Good stuff, guys. All right. We have one more key talking point for the night. Before we get to that, we're going to take one more break and a check into the Whatnot app. For those that weren't here before, if you guys aren't following me on the Whatnot app, go check me out at Journos Comics. I will be giving away a book tonight if we reach 475 followers on the Whatnot app. I'll be giving away The Boys #1, the Gem Mint and Comic Tom exclusive variant. I'll be throwing in this Scout digital comic pack right here too. And maybe I'll be throwing in another book or two as well. And of course, you get a Journos comic sticker. Let's do a check. Let's see what we got going on in terms of the followers. And remember, guys, my next Whatnot sale is on Friday next week, 1 week from tonight. So I hope to see you guys there. I know Bronze Age, you're on Whatnot.
Correct.
Como, Drew, are you on Whatnot?
I am. I've done 3 sales now.
Right. That's right. So, guys, go follow them too. All right. Where are we at? Yeah, man, you guys, either most of you are already following me there, or you're just not downloading the app. But we are still 23 away. But there is a link below if you haven't downloaded the app. If you use that link to sign up, you get $10 off of your first purchase. And it doesn't have to be for me. You can go check out a sale from one of these guys and buy something from them and get $10 off. So we'll do one more check-in tonight. But we're going to get to our final talking point of the evening, folks. And this is where we're going to, I know this last segment really talked heavily on CGC. We're going to really talk about the entire grading company right now. We're going to talk about competitive market, a competitive grading market. We're going to look at it currently, what that means looking forward. just to give my little spiel right now. I mean, obviously we have CGC, we have CBCS, we have PGX, and we have EGS. For me, I am all about competition. Anybody that has studied any type of business, maybe in school or, wherever, you guys would understand that competition matters in most industries. Obviously you have, oligarchies or monopolistic type industries, like when you talk about, essential resources like water, or energy and things like that. So we're going to set those aside, but any type of retail business, any type of service business or service industry, competition is a healthy thing. I know a lot of people say, oh, CGC's a monopoly. It's got a monopoly on the market. It absolutely does not. Now, when they were the first grading company, if there was, and I don't actually know, do you guys know, when did CBCS?
CBCS, oh gosh, 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
It was a while. And I think PGX started before that.
Yes.
But there was I'm not going to get into that. So, once you get multiple, companies offering the same service, the same product, of course, this is not a monopoly, regardless of how much market share one company gets. Okay. I want to throw that out of the way and make that clear. We have essentially right now 4 competitive industry players. I personally, we all may have our personal opinions. Like, I personally do believe that PGX, although I will give PGX credit, I think it was maybe 2019 when they changed their slabs and labels again. And I thought they started looking, and any slab before that with PGX, I thought was horrible garbage. And I just wouldn't buy it because I thought it looked horrible. But I actually don't mind the aesthetics of their current slab. But I personally would never spend money on sending books to PGX because I do not trust their grading at all. I think 90% of the books that they grade are heavily overgraded comparative to any of the other companies. Obviously, I love and respect what EGS has been doing. They're providing a sub-market that none of the other companies provide when it comes to custom grading. They're very, very transparent because they have grader notes on every single book. Great customer service. Obviously, if you're looking at differentials and turnaround time, that matters as well. I recently purchased a CBCS slab. I really like their new slabs. I actually like their new labels. I like them a lot. I think CGCS has the best cases. Obviously, I question some of their quality control. I question the validity and some of the grades sometimes, lack of grader notes, all those things. So, and Drew, I'm going to lead up I'm going to have Bronze Age. I'm going to have you start this off. But I want to lead into this with a little more of my own personal perspective here before I let you guys jump in. I believe really, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, graded comics are both a product and a service. Because there are people out there that simply say they should, there's no reason that one company should be worth more than the next. If an Amazing Spider-Man 300 is a 9.8 and a CBCS and a CGC, they should be worth the same. I disagree, because you're not just paying for the service of the certified grade. You're paying for a product, and that product is the aesthetics, the way the slab looks and feels, the way the label looks and feels. So there are differentials in what make one product and service different than the other. It's just like Pete's, Starbucks. It's just like shopping at, Lucky's or Safeway or Vaughn's or whatever there are. I don't know. I'm on the West Coast, so those are my options. But there are differentials, and I think that'll always be there in terms of looking at value. But we do know that CGC takes the cake when it comes to top tier value on the secondary market. So, Bronze Age, I'll let you jump in. This is a bit of a two-part thing here. I call it the chicken or the egg when it comes to CGC being the top dog on the secondary market in terms of value. I personally believe that they had a head start. They were the first grading company out there, and they just kind of like solidified themselves in the market before anyone could jump in. They had a head start. You know, so is it the chicken or the egg? Are we really valuing their service and product more, and that's why we're willing to pay a higher price, or are we just falling in line because they're already, you know, going for that higher price, so then we just follow suit, right? So how do you look at that currently on the market? And how do you think we'll ever get past that? Or how do you think we can ever change that perception? And obviously, your answer might pertain to looking at that competitive factor.
Yeah. And it's truly, you know, this is something that when we talked about this show coming up, this is one of those things that I just thought was a fascinating topic. I think it's a great experiment, a thought experiment that we should all be asking ourselves if you're into slabbing books. And I think that really what it comes down to is sort of like you said, CGC got out of the gates early. They had a decent enough reputation. They had the funding. They clearly had the backing. And, you know, you kind of look at the market and where it's at. And even though Steve Borak left and he founded CBCS, that encouraged some people to go to CBCS. Some people definitely kind of went with him, if you will. Some people always want to drink Pepsi instead of Coke.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm a Pepsi guy. Like, so, you know, I'm totally down with that. I don't really drink much soda, but, you know, when I do, I like to go for the, yeah. See? No, but it's just one of those things where you do have people that want to be kind of the contrarian a little bit too. So you're going to have people that go over to say CBCS, but really what you have to look at is what's the value difference. And if you've been a CGC customer, there's probably only a couple of factors that are going to get you to go to another grading company. And I'm not just saying that there's only two grading companies, but there's a point I'll get to here. When it comes to CGC, if you were that loyal customer, they either had to really mess up, really tick you off, or you had to have a reason to want to switch to a different grading company. And when the guy who founded one company goes over and kind of, you know, helps start up another company, and there's not a ton of real difference to me. When I look at CGC and CBCS, I personally value those books about the same. I think there's been points in history where CGC has been a little bit more accurate on grading. I think there's points where CBCS has been a little bit more accurate on grading. And kind of when I say that, I think a little bit more harsh, which I want. I want kind of a harsh grade personally. A more critical grade probably is a better way to say that. And I look at those two companies and I'm like, well, why would I go to CBCS exclusively over CGC? Maybe it's price, and so for some people that's a factor, but then you also have to consider resale and whether or not it's really true. And I think it's actually less true than most people think. You have tons of people in this hobby that say, well, CGC is going to get you top dollar. And that might technically be true, but the actual difference between those books sometimes isn't as high as people think it is, or isn't as much as people think it is. So I think it's really just kind of comes down to this whole idea of like, what is the perception of those companies and what makes you want to change? Now, you look at another company like, say, Tony over at EGS and EGS Grading Services. They are offering something different, and it has gotten some people excited. It hasn't, from what I can tell, and there's not a whole lot of numbers I've been able to contract on this, it probably hasn't moved the needle that much, but there are certainly people that want that custom label. And I can understand that. It's a different kind of thing. You know, CGC's done pretty well with the custom labels, which aren't really custom labels.
Character labels.
Yeah, you got your templates you can choose from. But there's a whole nother thing there with like whether or not you can actually get them, or they expire, or can you get the one for the book you want? Will it let you grab it for that particular book? But the thing that's really going to, you know, change when we're starting to talk about what does kind of shake this up, where does the chicken and the egg kind of, you know, take place? I think that for any of this to change, one of those companies has to make a radical change, or we have to have a new player in the grading market, which is the thing that even though there's really no talk about it out there other than kind of wishful thinking, that's what actually gets me excited, is thinking about somebody who has funding, somebody coming into the grading space. Maybe it's somebody from another type of industry where there are graded memorabilia out there, and getting into this and sort of shaking up the market as we see it today. Somebody who could be a true competitor to CGC and CBCS and offer those different types of either services or get people excited about going by any service. Maybe it's subgrades, that kind of stuff. Whatever is really going to move the needle for people, and that's up to individuals. But I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. Is we're going to be going with CGC for a while as the dominant force in the market until we have a significant reason to change.
I absolutely love that. I'm going to come back to that, but we'll let Drew step in. And again, just to reiterate, Drew, looking at both, the perception, the value currently, and of course all the other players, and that type of competition. How's that competition going to look moving forward?
Okay. I think a lot of it depends on the forum in which you're selling. Like if you're sending books to Heritage or Comic Link to sell, and you're going head to head, CBCS book, CGC book, right now, obviously the CGC book is going to take the lead most of the time. But out here in the trenches, like at shows and things like that, at least around here, every dealer I know sells CGC and CBCS books of the same grade for the same money. We have GPA for the most part. Look at Comic Link sales, just you amass all the data, you determine what the fair market value is, and that goes on the book regardless of if it's CBCS or CGC. So those two obviously are the big two. Now, when you deviate below that line and you start looking at PGX, some of the other carriers or other graders, that calculus changes a little bit. I know from my own personal experience, and just watching it happen in real time, PGX really burned themselves really bad with book swapping and just, let's be honest, one of the main things I look for when I submit a book is I want the restoration check. And when they're certifying books that are obviously restored as not restored, that is the biggest value killer in the hobby, as we all know. And it's just when you can at least rely on that piece of it being accurate, that burned all the goodwill. So I don't know that they'll ever get that back. Their new case looks a lot better. Anecdotally, I have a buddy who's just started getting into grading. So he's like, I'm going to try them. I'm going to send some books. He's like, it's awesome. It's cheap. I got them back pretty quickly. I will never do it again. And I'm like, all right, man, you do your thing. I didn't want to influence him one way or the other. Right. So to just have that feedback that, okay, he's just getting into comics, submitted to the other two, and despite all the advantages, speed and cost, to still have that reaction, I thought it was a really interesting situation just to see how somebody coming in fresh would review that. But in the future, I think it's already happening that the gulf between CBCS and CGC is closing. I got to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience with some of the other grading companies out there. I've seen a few Halo books, I think it is. But for the most part, it's just CBCS and CGC. And for my own personal reasoning on why I've trended more towards CBCS lately over CGC in recent years, CBCS still goes out to shows and takes direct submissions. I know CGC does, but they seem to think there's this giant void in the center of the country. There's like the West Coast and the East Coast, and then the Gulf. Right. And between those things is this massive nothingness. So I'm going to support the company that comes out and meets me where I am. So, we've got a local convention in Kansas City that pulls 50K attendees every year. There's no reason CGC shouldn't be at a show like that. Right. They're bogged down now. I get why they're not, but that's my take on that. But yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to chime in here and kind of pull in some stuff from what you both said, and then I'll let you guys get a final word. And I personally think that first off, in terms of the value on the market, I like what both of you had to say and share, because I think it really boils down to a perception that is overgeneralized, in my opinion. I've actually seen, and I'm not sitting there looking at it every day, but I'll hop on and I'll pick a certain book and I'll look at sales. I'll pull up eBay. I'll even go on Mercari, and it's amazing sometimes some of the things you see on Mercari. And I've not only seen kind of like certain gaps become close with CBCS and CGC. I've seen some CBCS books sell higher than the most recent CGC. So I hope everyone watching right now understands that, and like you said, Drew, I think when you look at like these big heritage auctions, probably the bigger books, it becomes not just perception, it becomes more validated that they're going to be looking at CGC as the standard, the standard that we trust. It's been here since day one, to set the tone. But again, I think that shift is already there. It's already starting. I think CBCS has definitely made some great business decisions that have continued to propel them upward, while I think CGC kind of lagged on that end. But again, to both of what you guys said, it's not like necessarily they're not caring. It's just that they are the top dogs with so much business that it's almost easier for a company like CBCS to sit and say, we can, or even we have to do this right now if we want to stay competitive. Where CGC is like, okay, now we're at a point where we need to start figuring it out. And I'm going to get to why this is still actually healthy for everyone involved. But then, to what you said, Bronze Age, you see something exciting happening that really is this, I don't want to say shock and awe, but it's something that takes notice, that can really grab people's attention, that really differentiates, instead of just saying, well, CBCS doesn't have the little white sticker, or they're $2 cheaper, or whatever, whatever the case may be. Or, they can't talk about turnaround times anymore because they're both crazy. So turnaround times, all this stuff. Yeah. Something that really changes the game and says that is different. And again, guys, I'm not sitting here promoting a certain company. I'm just being real in my analyzation. I'm going to pull out a EGS slab again. Now, one thing that I don't think people know is that EGS offers the standard labels. I think people just think that, they're just a custom label grading service. Custom labels are options. They have a blue label. They have a signature series label. Just want to throw that out there. But I believe that if EGS, and again, I did an honest review. It was from last year. So they made some changes since then. I actually like their case. I don't, they have the little, what would you call these? The hinges. They have the hinges on top. I know that's, a lot of people say that I don't like the aesthetic of that, but a lot of people that judge EGS haven't actually held the slab. The slab feels good in the hand, but I will say, look, it's not CGC. It's not a CGC case. Custom labels aren't for everyone, but a lot of people like them. I like them a lot for certain books. I would want a standard blue label for other books. If EGS upgrades their cases and competes with the new CBCS cases, I'd show a CBCS, but I don't have it on me. But those new CBCS cases are nice. They really are.
Yeah.
They compete in terms of an aesthetic with CGC. If EGS gets to that case level, I think there it is. Yep, there it is. And that looks really nice, even on screen. Bronze Age, I really think EGS could be just that example. And if EGS wasn't here, I would use anybody, or I would, use a hypothetical. So, and one thing that I do know is that EGS is a growing company, and I know that they have plans. And that's all I'll say. They have plans to evolve their product, which includes case. So I'm actually very hopeful right now. This is kind of my final take, and I'll let you guys have final word here. I'm very, very hopeful for a competitive market. People get on me because I make videos about CGC. I was like, this book came back a 9.8 and I'm pissed. And they're like, you're mad because you thought it would be a 9.9? No, I'm mad because it should have been an 8.5. What the hell are they doing? Right? Or, I question things, and I like to allow people to critically think about things. But people are like, you're just butthurt, like CGC, like, flaws happen, or, mistakes that nobody's perfect. If I didn't care about CGC, I wouldn't talk about them. And it boils down to that. Like, I send books off to CGC. Actually, might send books off to CBCS because I have a coupon right over here. And I've got books. I have, EGS books, and I have more books sitting ready to send to EGS because they're, like I said, there's some books where I don't care about a custom label. There's other books that I do, and I'll send those books to EGS for a custom label. Even if I think, maybe CGC's current cases are a little better than EGS's cases, EGS still provides a different product. Some days I might want to drink a Pepsi. Some days I might want to drink a root beer. It's just, right, flavor of the month. But if I critique something, mostly it's because I want them to succeed and I want them to evolve. And I do believe that the grading industry is going to continue to evolve as a whole. I still think the grading industry is in its infancy. It's only been around for just over 20 years, folks. And in the scheme of things, it's still not a lot of time. I believe that CGC is at a crossroads right now, and not some crazy crossroads to where they're going to fail. I think it can happen because even Rome fell. I will use that analogy still, but I think they know what they're doing. I think they're taking their time. I think people are going to leave. I think people are saying, you know what, at this point, CBCS does offer something that I value more now. So I'm good with leaving CGC. I think EGS does offer something that I can value more now, but I don't think it's going to be enough to where it's going to really, kill CGC. But what I think is going to happen is that CGC is going to continue to evolve. CBCS is going to continue to evolve. EGS is going to continue to evolve. And I think the market share is going to grow. Not only is it going to grow, it's going to shift around. I would add PGX. I don't want to be a hater. I would add PGX, but like you guys stated too, I think they really dug up their own grave. And who knows? I do think there's room for other companies to come on board and give it a try and try to penetrate what once seemed to be an impenetrable market. So I'm very, very hopeful and optimistic overall for every company. And I think there is going to be healthy competition on the market. And when I say healthy, I'm not saying that EGS is ever going to, topple over CGC or even that CBCS is. I don't think it needs to happen like that. But I think there's going to be a playing field to where we're going to see at least a few competitors exist and be extremely healthy and be seen by a good chunk of the market as being a valid player in the grading industry. So that's my final words. Drew, I'll let you jump in here, get final words, and then we'll end with Bronze Age.
Okay. I mean, if you want to look at it like retail wise, look at Walmart and Kmart, right? Like Kmart was the top dog, and Walmart just kept plugging away and doing what it did. And eventually Kmart just fell apart from the inside. Yep. So I think that's when you get to be the top, it's easy to get complacent or let things tear you down from the inside like that. And I think that's what CGC is going to have to avoid if they want to maintain that top position, because when you are the top dog, everybody else is gunning for you. So how long that'll take, will that happen? I don't know. I'm just happy to see the market kind of recognizing that there is some equality amongst them. You can find examples from any of the companies where it's like, okay, that book's overgraded, that book's undergraded, that case sucks. Like, I mean, it's just, it is what it is. But I think it'll be interesting to see where we go in 10 years time, just to look back now and remember the great graded comic wars of the early 2010 or late 2010s and early 2020s.
There you go. I dig it. Ron's age.
Yeah, so just a thought that kind of comes from this for me when I'm thinking about all of this is, and I'm a real novice when it comes to sports cards. So if I'm a little off base when I say this, sports cards reference, let me know. But from what I understand, when it comes to sports card grading, there are at least some kind of general ideas that, hey, I'll go with this company if I have a vintage card. I'll go with this company if I have a brand new, parallel or whatever. I'll go with this company if I have, a collectible, that kind of thing. So I think that there's room for the collectibles comic book graded market to kind of follow a similar pattern, and hopefully we see some specialization from these companies to where we can start to separate the pack. And especially when it comes to CGC and CBCS, there are very CBCS has the signature verification program, for example. That's a different type of value add that they have.
Right.
I want to see those types of differences really fleshed out. And I do stand by the fact that even, seeing EGS improve is great. CBCS improve is great. Same with CGC. I'd love to see PGX improve, but I would like to see a new kind of competitor really kind of enter the field and shake things up even to one extra degree. I don't know that we'll see that. There's obviously money involved in grading comic books. And when that happens, I feel like you will see more competition. And just like Chris was saying, that extra competition, in my mind, is going to be better for the consumer in the long run. And that's what I'm hoping to see, is kind of that consumer forward thinking from these companies. And that's what I'd really hope to see.
Awesome. I have one last quick question for both of you. Okay. And it's going to start off by me giving a little bit of history. It was Overstreet that really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like petitioned for a third-party grading company. Even way back is the 80s. And at one point there, they created the 100-point grading scale, which ended up being absolutely nuts. Going down to the 25-point that we're at today, 25-point being each grading point within the 10 number. Some people call it a 10-point, but it's really the 25 because of all the grade points. So, it's funny because there's a lot of people that say, oh, what happened to the LCSs, just using Overstreet or whatever that's what Robert Overstreet was saying. We need a third party doing this and push for somebody like CGC to come through and happen. So here we are. So here's my question though. We evolved to these third party grading companies. A lot of people think they did it to avoid, like a conflict of interest. Like, well, if a comic book store is grading their own books, then, isn't that a conflict of interest and so forth? Obviously, any seller has to grade their own books to be able to say to their customer that, oh, well, we think this is this. But there is a lot of chirp out there about conflict of interest, even within the third-party grading companies. And again, whether it's malicious or not, whether they're just concerned with their, bottom dollar, their profit margins, and that just, whatever the case may be. But do you guys feel, Bronze Age, and this could be just a really quick answer, or you can add a little to it, but do you think that we will ever get a from the third part, outside of the third party grading companies, a third party panel, kind of like the Comic Code Authority, where maybe we have somebody from CGC and CBCS sitting on a panel. Maybe we have somebody from, LCSs, LCS owners. Maybe we have some, somebody that works for Marvel or somebody that works for a publishing company. We just get, kind of these this collective of people that work as this kind of code authority that kind of regulates the third-party grading companies. Do you think we'll ever see anything like that happening?
Are you advocating for an Illuminati?
Right?
Yeah,
comic
absolutely.
grading Illuminati.
It's fascinating, and it's one thing that I think you might be the first person I ever heard bring this up. Maybe you were the first person to bring it up when it came to first appearances. You talked about kind of a similar idea.
Yep.
And I think that's really interesting. I think to me, the you know, the big question there that you touched on is what's the vector? Is it coming from, you know, from a company that's putting it forward and they kind of bring some consensus to it? To me, the interesting thing there would be is if the community started that. If us as the hobby itself, the people that are most invested in what that answer is, we're able to kind of come together and talk about this, you know, maybe with some help from like an Overstreet or something like that, those types of things. That would be fascinating to me. And then, of course, get kind of every player at the table involved, I think is the most fair way to do that. But, you know, you got to be careful what you wish for, because as we know with bureaucracy,
Yes. Yep.
you can invite a lot, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So you have to be careful what you wish for there a little bit, but I think it's a fascinating idea. And I think that it's like the concept of so many things in our society where it's set up right now where we could just do it. Like we could make that happen. It's just can enough of us come together and make it happen. And if we want to, we can make it happen. So food for thought as we kind of walk away from the show. I think it's an interesting little nugget to consider.
Definitely. Drew, thoughts?
I tell you, I've been distracted this last few moments because Joseph in the chat dropped something. He brought up, and sorry to go sideways here, CVA. Are you guys familiar with them, where they actually rate slabs, like books within an individual grade? So they will take CGC only, I believe, but they will take books and review them within a grade and present them with this certification if they present in what they consider to be an exceptional manner within the grade.
Oh, wow.
So I've seen some of these books. I think Comic Link was paired up with them or something for a while, but a lot of them went through there. So that's another interesting tangent of something that's happening in the market, where
kind of like your check mark with CBCS, where they say like this presents
yes,
better than...
but you know, separate, so somebody else is getting their cut on the process too, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something interesting. I just wanted to point out. So what was the original question? I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm distracted.
Comic grading Illuminati. Do you think?
Oh yeah.
No, an authority, a panel, you know, oversight committee, so to say.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. The main thing with that is it's going to have to be people that have buy-in, you know, that have a certain weight within the community. Because if it's just a bunch of asshats from YouTube or from wherever, nobody's going to care, right? It's like we need to have people of a certain esteem within the community that are part of it. And I think, you know, there are different people who like different whatever, right? No two people are ever going to like the same. So I think the problem you would run in with some of that is there's always going to be an element within the community that's not going to consider the opinions of an Illuminati valid because so-and-so's on there. You know, this one person I don't like is going to taint the whole board, despite the fact everybody else that's on there I think is badass or whatever. So I think there's some elements of that, but you know, it would be great if in anything in this hobby we could come up with a consensus and just kind of stick with it. I mean, there's been so many things over the years where we've been wishy-washy back and forth, and if you know we would have assigned someone the ultimate power to just make decrees that, you know, Hulk 181 is the first appearance of Wolverine, it wouldn't be 2022 and we'd still have to argue about a book that's that old.
Right, for sure. I will say, you know, there's that possibility of more bureaucracy, creating more bureaucracy, creating more. So, you know, you get somebody to police the policing that's policing the policing.
Who
and so
watches the
forth. So,
Watchmen?
yeah. Yeah. When will it ever end? Exactly. I like this. So, guys, we're definitely going to wrap up here, man. Great discussion tonight. I'm going to say a couple things real quick. I wanted to share this Swagwall's comment. He says, an empire that is toppled by its enemies can rise again, but one which crumbles within, that is dead forever. I don't think that's from Sun Tzu, but very Sun Tzuism type.
Baron Zemo.
Zemo.
Oh, yeah, he said that in the
If Swag says it, you know it's from a Master of Evil.
Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? Did he say that in there?
I think it was
Civil War.
It was a Civil War, I think.
Okay, but yeah, very much of a type of a Sun Tzu approach of looking at how we can go into battle, in this sense, go into business and conquer and establish our foundation. And I think that's a very great point. And that's why I do feel that, when we talk about CGC, it would be up to them to for themselves to fail. It would be their own by their own working. So, but guys, so just great stuff all around to everyone that's been watching, that's still here. Thank you guys for being here. I just want to say to you all, I like to end my shows by just giving a little piece of, advice and summing some things up. We talked about a lot of different aspects of the grading, industry and grading hobby within the comic book hobby itself. And at the end of the day, folks, you guys have to collect how you enjoy and make smart decisions for you all. Grading comics isn't for everyone. So my advice to you would be, just don't come at anything with hate, with blind hate. Approach the hobby in a way to where you can enjoy what makes you happy about it, while other people are enjoying it in a way that makes them happy about it. And the grading aspect of this hobby makes a lot of people happy, and it's here to stay. And I'm sure most of you that are still here watching enjoy the grading aspect of the hobby to some extent, or I don't know if you would have sat and watched us talk about it for 2 hours. So, but just remember that first and foremost. And if you guys are into the grading aspect of the hobby, whether you're putting money out to grade books or buy graded books because you care about resale value, you care about long-term investment, you care about aesthetics, you want them to look nice, hanging them up on the wall, whatever the case may be. I hope that we were able to give you guys a lot of insight and critique on all these different things. And, it's something that is very, very multifaceted. There's a lot of layers here, and it's something that does continue to evolve each and every day. So whatever you guys are doing, just always make sure that you are informed. Don't just, hop on to, rhetoric that you see online. Critically think about things, dive into things, watch YouTubers, listen to what they have to say, but question it, and then go do some more research and so forth. So I say that about everything in this hobby, whether it's graded comic books or not. So I hope you guys could definitely take some of that out of this show tonight. But before we go, I do want to let Drew and Bronze Age just give themselves a little bit of their own time on stage here to talk about their channels. Again, links are below. Go sub them up if you guys haven't yet. Follow them on Instagram, follow them on whatnot. But Drew, what's going on? Anything going on the YouTube channel or whatnot, or anything coming up?
Yeah, we got stuff happening. I love what you said there. I want to reiterate that the most important thing, and I'm sure you get a lot of questions about this too. It's like, people ask me all the time, I've got this book, should I slab it, or what slab book should I buy? That stuff. Ask why you're slabbing it. If actually having a book slabbed is what's important to you, then yeah, have it slabbed. What's it matter what anybody else says? But just make sure you're not doing it just because that's the cool thing. That's what all the cool kids are doing. As far as what I got going on, I'm just trying to get my video out a week, trying to mix up some things, trying some new formats, trying some new layouts, having a good time with the channel, rocking the Instagram, slowly building followers up there, having a good time playing with that too. Whatnot's been interesting. I like to do a lot of like run fillers, cheaper books and stuff like that, just bulk things that I have laying around. So I'm going to continue to play with that. So if you're on Whatnot, feel free to hit me up. Be sure you hit Chris and Bronze Age as well. It's a fun app. It's FOMO is real though. You know, you got to be careful on there.
Absolutely.
There's been a few too many packages show up to my house lately.
But
you know, it's good. And I enjoy it. So check it out if you haven't.
Right on, man. I'll tell you, man, I got a couple of videos and maybe even a live stream coming up where I'm going to be talking specifically about Whatnot, and I'm selling on Whatnot too. So but I still gotta speak the truth to power, right? So right on. True. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for
Bronze Age. What you got going on? Anything coming up?
Yeah. First, I just want to take a second, guys. Really give it up for Chris over here for putting this together and doing these roundtable discussions that he's doing on these Friday night shows. And you know, even something I watched last night, I caught it on the rewind. Something that was happening in the community. I won't get into the whole thing. You know, he had Brian McClay on to talk about a topic that I think is really important. And I always got to give it up for him because that's what he's doing. He's bringing in other voices and letting you guys kind of have these conversations play out before you. And I think that's somehow we get stuff done. So I really appreciate that. So thanks for being a great host here tonight, Chris. I really appreciate that.
Couldn't do without you guys, man.
So as far as for what I got going on, yeah, guys, you can go follow my YouTube channel. The link is in the description below, as Chris said. Definitely go give Drew a follow as well. I am doing a Whatnot here in less than an hour at 9 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. It is a first time I'm doing something like this. It's a red light, risque kind of covers kind of thing. That's something you can do on Whatnot that you can't do in other places. So I thought, why not
get
run with
naughty
that
up in here?
So you guys can
break out the champagne bottles and get crazy on the Whatnot.
Exactly. In addition to that, I do the videos of the top 5 not to buy. Those have been pretty popular. I kind of talk about just whatever I want on my channel that I think is going on, what's important to me, and what I see being important to my viewers. Like I just covered, you know, hey, some signs that you might have an LCS that has room for improvement, needs some work. And then I also try to balance it out with some positivity too. So I say, hey, what are some signs you have a great LCS? Right. Stuff like that. So you can get, can't talk at the end of the show here. You guys can go check that out. Also, you can go check out my Instagram too. I'd love to get over 1,000 followers on Instagram, and you guys can see some of the cool stuff I post up there and some of the dumb memes and stuff. But thanks so much for everybody for joining us on this particular show tonight. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. And I got to say, AC, I forgot. There's the A1 patio sale tomorrow. Oh my goodness. I might have to go. Oh, so thank you, AC, for reminding me, man. Damn it. Now I
think the FOMO just hit.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, guys. Drew, Bronze Age, thank you guys so much. Thank you for the kind words as well. Again, this is all about community. Everyone in the chat just as equally as much. You know, you being here means a lot. And at the end of the day, it's comic books. It's something we love, and it connects us on a deeper level as well. So, with that being said, great discussion tonight. Again, follow Como, follow Bronze Age on all the platforms. We are here constantly for you guys. Thank you all for being here. Remember, Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, Comic Book Canada Show. We're going to be giving away another slab. We have an honorary guest coming on, and we also have a special guest co-host coming on as well. So check that out. And of course, check out Bronze Age's Red Night special coming up here real shortly. But with that being said, folks, one last thing, actually, because we didn't hit 475 followers on my Whatnot, but I'm going to tell you guys what. This is what I'm going to do for everyone that was here tonight. I'm still going to give this away to somebody that was here. I'm going to go through the chat and take everyone's name that was here in the chat and do a randomizer, and somebody's going to win this. So I'll be announcing this. Look out for I'll probably just put a little community post up calling out your name. So I just thought, hey, you know, this was a great stream tonight. You guys hung out. Somebody's going to be taking this home. So with that being said, guys, again, Drew, Bronze Age, thank you so much for joining. Be well, be safe, guys. Have a great weekend. Peace.
See ya.